Hello, hello. I guess what I should say is AA, because it's Canada Day. Here we are, and it's Happy Canada Day to the 12% of you who watch us and celebrate. I got my Canada kit on, along with this Canada bucket hat I bought for $12.99 from my local Canadian Tire. So, shout out them. Ciaran, how you feeling, bro?
I'm feeling good. Good, refreshing, long weekend. Yeah, Canada made it out of the group stage at Copas, which was hype. And we only scored one goal, but we got it down. That's efficiency right there.
Yeah.
My team there, Georgia, we had a nice upset over Portugal, but unfortunately fell short against Spain. But no, I'm excited. It's been
Georgia.
It was a good weekend. So
yeah, much needed day off here on Monday, and I know the U.S. have their Independence Day coming up too. So happy Independence Day to all of you. I believe you're 63%. So happy Independence Day to the 63% of you. Sorry about your national team, kind of jank. People are hating on the Canadian national team for scoring one goal through 3 games. What I will counter with is that the French national team scored 1 goal through 4 games, and none of them were through open play, and they're through to the quarterfinals. So I will not be accepting that slander. But what I'm happy to announce today is we are going to be introducing our masterclass real quick before we hop into the contents of today. We're going to be hosting an entirely free masterclass on Sunday night at 9 p.m. Eastern. Where we basically will take your questions. We'll do it kind of live. We're going to go through the world's invite structure. Not so much explaining it, more so how to approach it, how to go about getting your invite this year or achieve whatever goals you want to achieve. So we'll be doing that on Sunday. All you have to do, you're going to see a form below in the description. Just fill it out. 2 questions. Take you like 2 seconds. Just has your YouTube username so we can verify you're subscribed. And then there's a section to add any questions you may have for us. And we're going to be doing it live on YouTube here. So please do subscribe and show up, or show up and then subscribe. I don't really care. We're going to have moderators just making sure that people who are in there are subscribed. But yeah, it should be a lot of fun.
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to it. So yeah, just drop your questions. We're going to mainly focus on how to approach a new season, how to achieve your goals and all that. But we're happy to answer any questions you have. And again, it'll be live, so if you want to have questions live, do that too. So we always love commenting or chatting with you guys in the comments in all our videos. So just interacting live will be really fun for everybody involved. So looking forward to it. Definitely come if you can make it.
Yeah. So today what we're going to be doing is, yesterday I was at a very jank event and I was talking to Ciaran and I was like, what should we talk about this week? And he's like, you know what, let's just do an Ask Me Anything. So we threw out the Ask Me Anything. And not to our surprise here, none of the questions were about Pokemon. So about 90% of the questions were about about sports or the NBA, and then we had 10% of questions about Pokemon. So we're gonna cover that right at the end. What we're gonna do this week, obviously a bit of a slower week in terms of content. We're gonna be covering the current metagame, where it kind of is, what you should be bringing to your local challenges, cups, with that in mind, with best of 1 in mind, stuff like that. So we're gonna go through all the decks here and kind of give you an idea of where we think they sit and whether they're a good shout to bring it to a tournament there. So without further ado, let's hop into Gardevoir here.
Yeah, so I think with League Cups coming up, we just want to go through the state of the meta, our opinions on all the decks, which ones you should be playing if you're trying to get a good start to the season. So this is PokeHive. I really love their data. So this is scraped from online tournaments from Limitless, and they kind of have, it's cool for each deck. They'll kind of have the meta share, its win rate, and how much it converts to top cut. And then its win rate against each deck in the meta, which is awesome. And then it has some lists. So go check them out on Twitter. They're a great follow. So let's start with Gardevoir. I think Gardevoir is probably the best deck. I'd say it's probably tier S by itself. If you look here, it's pretty solid into lots of things, and even some matchups it has only a slightly unfavored matchup. So I think, honestly, and also in Gardevoir playing best of 1, you don't have to worry about ties. So I think it even gets buffed even more when you play it at a League Cup or a League Challenge. So to me, if you're just a strong player, you want the highest chance of converting, doing well, I would say probably play Gardevoir. Even its bad matchups, with skill and you have a lot of agency in your play, you can still find ways to win, which I think is awesome. Then other shameless plug, go watch my Gardevoir guide video on my main YouTube if you haven't watched it. Which, if you watched it, guys, you watched it. But if you haven't, go watch that too. But yeah, Neil, what do you think about Gardevoir?
Yeah, it's it was everywhere. I was at a tournament yesterday. It was all over the place. It's all over the place online as well, and for good reason. I think it's really strong. There's a lot of Gardevoir people that kind of got adopted into new Gardevoir now. Some people that stopped playing it after rotation, kind of coming back full circle to it. So, really good deck. I think it is countered by Jamming Tower in high quantities, so that is a little bit concerning in terms of the target you have on your back. But for the most part, if you're a good player, you can play around Jamming Tower. You can do all these things to make your deck kind of resilient to that. So as you can see with the numbers here, the win rate is no lie. This deck is really good all around, and as you can see, the decks that are kind of you're expecting to see the most are kind of, they're not really concentrated in one place on the top or the bottom of the win rate percentage. They're kind of all over the place. So your top 4 decks are probably like Lost Zone, Reggie Drago surprisingly right now, Champpal, maybe Charizard. Those decks are kind of all over the place on this win rate chart. So you're kind of okay into everything, it feels. You have nothing higher than 60, nothing lower than 40, which is always good. So I like it. If you're a good player, like Ciaran said, pick this up, give it a shot, give it a whirl. Feels really good with Monkey Dory. A lot of cool plays you can make as well with the damage counters. So, yeah, I love it.
Yeah, what kind of approach would you take for the list? Because I think at NAIC, so we had 6 in top cut. I think a lot of them took a different approach. So I think you had Stefan playing the Hyper Aroma. We had the Australians, they were playing the Unfair Stamp. You had Henry Chow. I think he had the coolest list where it was like not even playing like Drifloon. It was focused more on like the Fluttermane and Devo. Which one do you like? I'll kind of give my opinion too, but I'll start with you. Which version of the deck do you like the best?
To be honest, like, I don't think I have a preference. Like, there's so many different ways you can play this, and I think it's so meta dependent on what you're seeing in front of you. Like, do you have an opinion on which one you prefer?
Yeah, I think it depends. Like you're gonna say, that's what I was gonna say too. If you expect a lot of mirror matches, like a lot of Lost Box, a lot of Charizard evolving decks, I think Henry Chow's list is great. I'm just gonna pull it up while I'm talking here. So his list actually focuses more on, I don't know if control is the right word, but his list is like, it forgoes the Drifloon. So you're slightly worse into stuff like Raging Bolt, but his list makes up for it by like he plays the TM Devo and he plays double Flutter and double Monkey. So this version of the deck is really good at like spreading damage around, like blocking and then taking big swing turns with like the Devo, which I really, really like. I think this version of the deck, especially with the Mimikyu, like has a better Charizard matchup. So if your locals play a lot of Charizard, this version is really good into Mirror. You're good into Lost Box since you have double Flutter, so you can like block basically the Iron Bundle. You can even play Clef Key if you wanted, but in this version the Flutter is good. And you have double Monkey, like double Turo, triple Dark, so you can pull off tons of plays. So I think this version is really fun. It's slightly worse into aggressive decks. So if you have a meta with a lot of aggressive players, I would probably play a more normal version of Gardevoir. But if you have a meta with people who like the slower decks, like the more, I don't know, grindy decks like Gardevoir, Lost Box, Charizard, all that, I think this is a really, really cool version to play. And this is probably, if I played right now, I'd probably play something like this. I think it's really cool. This is my favorite.
Yeah, good show. It has a lot of like movement. There's a lot of like ways you can maneuver this deck. Like as you mentioned with the double Turo is really cool, and then 3 Darks is a lot. So you do have a lot of emphasis on Monkey here, and I think you're correct in that sense. Like in those formats where you have a little bit more time to set up, this is probably the best one to play.
Yeah, exactly. And it has like the luxurious capes. You kind of have something similar to Drifloon with Screamtail. It's just like not as consistent and as good. So yeah, I really like that. Otherwise, I think all the other lists from top 8 are pretty good. I think the Australian list, I like the Australian list as well. They play a more standard list, like they play the Drifloon Brave Returns, but they also play the TM Devo, which I really like. I think TM Devo and Guardy is pretty strong. It's good in Mirror, it's good in Charizard, it's good against Champpal. So yeah, I would definitely start with a list from top 8 NAIC and then figure out which one you like the best. So
absolutely. Yeah, cool. Good shout.
All right, let's talk next. Sitting on the deck that actually won NAIC, we have the Lost Box. I think this is another deck that actually has a really, really good matchup spread. Again, you don't have to worry about time in best of 1. If you do go to time in top cut at Elite Cup, this deck's actually pretty good at taking early prizes. So I'm a big fan of Lost Box. Its matchup spread is actually quite good as well. Its only really bad matchups are like not that popular. Like, I guess besides Reggie Drago a little bit. Otherwise, everything else, its matchup spread, I'd say is close to 50-50 or slightly favored, especially if you're a strong pilot. I'm personally not really a Lost Zone player myself, so I probably won't play Lost Box, but I think if you're someone who's enjoyed playing like Lost Zone style decks in the past, like I think Lost Box is in a fantastic position for local tournaments.
Yeah, I love it. I think there's a time where every deck's reign has to come to an end. I think this one is coming soon because of Ciaran. We'll see how much that actually does affect it, but if you're a Lost Zone person, like absolutely get it out now for the next couple months, play Lost Zone, enjoy it. This deck is really good into just about everything. It feels like you have a pretty good matchup spread all around, and there's a lot of skill expression with this deck as well, so you can kind of turn some of those bad matchups more favorable if you're playing against a less skilled player or something like that. So I really like it. I think the Ursaluna adds a lot of depth to it. I think there's a lot more than there used to be available to it in terms of tools and attackers. I know a lot of them cut Roaring Moon, so a little bit less aggressive in that sense, but there's a lot of room for maneuverability with this build, and even like those bad matchups like Ancient Box, Reggie Drago Box, like Ancient Box is pretty tough, but Reggie Drago you can beat for sure. It's definitely possible. And same with Zard. I see Zard there at a negative win rate. Like, all these things are turnable. So if you're a skilled player, maybe you want a one-trick Lost Zone box for locals or even for Worlds. If you don't think Ciaran's going to be a threat, it's not a bad idea to commit to this.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, I would just say if you're a Lost Zone player historically, like, keep playing Lost Zone. It's very good.
It won NAIC for a reason, right? Like,
so I don't play Lost Box enough to have an opinion on which list to tell you to play, so probably just play Hedrick's list. But
that does seem like the best one for sure.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Okay, next up we have Raging Bolt. I think Raging Bolt's an interesting deck in the sense that, like, its matchup spread isn't that good on paper, but it's a super consistent fast deck and it's, like, very easy to play. So I would recommend playing Raging Bolt if you like haven't had like a lot of time to practice, or you're someone who likes aggressive decks. Like, you've liked a Roaring Moon in the past, you've liked a Miraidon in the past. I mean, like, this deck just does what it's supposed to do a majority of the time. And if your opponent like falters at all, like, you normally can just like punish their slow starts. So I think Raging Bolt's a fine deck. I'd say it's probably tier 2. It's personally not my style of deck to play, but I honestly think it is like actually a lot of fun for a lot of people. I think you draw so many cards, like, you flood the board with energy, take big one shots. So I think it's just like fine.
This deck feels really strong.
Yeah, and I will say
it feels strong.
If you're going to locals, like, this deck is going to be popular, so make sure that you understand how to beat it for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the one thing that's unsaid sometimes about these aggressive decks is, like, sometimes you'll just run your opponent off the board. Like, even in these bad matchups, the one that's like Ancient Box, Charizard, like, sometimes you're just so aggressive it doesn't matter. So that's like a big factor for me. I think some of these win rates are probably skewed. Even the top ones are probably skewed up a little bit, and the bottom ones can be skewed down a little bit. So I do think there's potential you have the most potential out of, like, most of these decks to beat anything at any given time just because of the pure pop-off potential of your deck. I really like that. I really like it for time purposes as well. I think going into Worlds, I think that's going to be pretty important. So I like that as well. The other thing is I think it's a little bit underrated how a Raging Bolt player can be strong at playing Raging Bolt. Like, I think some people just think it's just, hey, just Sada, blow up everything, which is true to an extent. But there are a lot of lines you can take that make one Raging Bolt player better than the other. So there is a lot of merit to one-tricking it, or maybe practicing it before you go to your locals and stuff. I do think there's a lot of potential to outplay people, especially with this deck, which some people may not see on the surface. So I think it's pretty cool. It's in a strong position going for locals and for Worlds. And even the addition of Jamming Tower, like, helps against Gardevoir. Like, there's other things like that you can kind of tech in. You do have a lot of space. So you can play maybe Cornerstone. You can play, like, there's a lot of things you can kind of throw in there. So if you see some of these negative matchups, you want to throw in a couple cards, make it better, there's also the potential for that. So I really like this deck. I think I don't think it's something I would want to play, but I definitely see the merit behind it and why people play it.
Yeah, for sure. I also think, like you said, like, I think we've seen, like, the Cornerstone mask go away. Like, if Charizard starts coming back at your locals, like Neil said, just throw it in. We've seen, like, lists, like, we had Shashi on our podcast, like, he was playing a list that had, like, the Jamming Towers, for example, to make Gardevoir. I'd say it probably was just, like, 50-50, so definitely that's not just, like, with this deck, but, like, if you can kind of get a good idea of what your local meta is like normally it's the same, like, 20 to 50 people in your locals. Like, if you have a rough idea of what decks they're going to be playing, you can definitely tech your deck a little bit for that. So I think Raging Bolt's cool. There's a couple approaches. You can take the hyper aggressive version, or you can, like, play, like we said, a little more teched out version. So I think for locals, I'd probably actually favor playing a little bit more techs if you can kind of figure out what your local meta is like. Cool. Next up, we have Lugia. And I'll let you take the reins since I've been talking first most of the time. So what do you think about Lugia?
Yeah, no, Lugia's, I don't know, man. On paper, it's so good. It's always so good. But then in practice, it just doesn't feel the same. I think Lugia was so hyped coming into this format. And I understand why. Like, when it sets up, it is unbelievably good. And I think the addition of Legacy Energy and the fact you can throw in Iron Hands and even, like, the Wellspring Mask, like, random attackers at whatever time that you want to throw in, I think is really, really strong. There has been, like, newer builds of Lugia now without Cinccino, which is pretty interesting as well. So I've been doing a little bit of diving into that. Nothing really stands out to me so far. I do think if you're playing this for Worlds, you do need to play Cinccino because Charizard's going to be on the rise like crazy. So, I think if you have the patience to deal with Lugia not playing the game, it's a great call. But that's a big contingency factor. Like, you need to be patient. You need to be okay with your deck not working sometimes. So, really strong deck. I just wish it had a bit more consistency.
Yeah, it's funny because, like, I feel like it flopped NAIC, but whenever I look at, like, online tournaments or, like, just the conversion in general, it always has, like, one of the highest win rates.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess it makes sense. Like, when the deck does what it's supposed to do, like, it does do well. I think Lugia is like just a solid pick. Like, its matchup spread is very good. Like, it's close into, like, Gardevoir, which is, like, probably the best deck. You beat, like, a bunch of, like, the random decks, which I like. But, like, yeah, like, you just have to be okay with, like, having less agency. Like, you're kind of, like, at the mercy of, like, what you flip on Aroma and what you draw off, like, your opening hands. But I actually think, like, Lugia is, like, probably just, like, in that tier right below Gardevoir. I think it's a great deck. I don't think it's that complicated to play either. So I think for now, like, if you're playing League Cups and Locals, I think one of the builds to explore is the one that, like, Alex Szymanski and his group played. This build, where it's, like, focused on the Iron Hands with, like, the Lightnings. This way you kind of just play around, like, the Enhanced Hammer play that a lot of Gardevoir players try and do on you. I think this version is really cool. They have even, like, stuff like Thornton if you want to switch things in and out. Because adding Chino to your deck does make it less consistent, and when you're playing best of one, you want your deck to be more consistent, since if you brick, you don't get 2 other games to try again. So I would maybe actually favor playing a build like this in best of one. But like Aneil said, like, when we look towards, like, best of 3 tournaments or towards Worlds, like, when Charizard's gonna get popular, probably play Cinccino, but for now, I think this is fine.
Yeah, I think it's there. I mean, like, there's so many times where, like, the Japanese tournaments are, like, different results from us because they play BO1 or they used to, at least, right? So I think these online Mickeys versus in person, like you mentioned, are very different. I guess Locals is best of one as well. So Lugia is not a bad show for Locals at all. For Cups challenges, I think it's a great show because all you got to do is play the game 4 or 5 times instead of 27 in a big tournament, right? So. I give a lot of merit to that. I think there's a lot of space for Lugia to do well.
Yep. Also, they have Drapion V to make sure they don't lose the new V Max, which is really nice.
I love Drapion V. Great card.
That's so funny. This is the best counter to Gardevoir. It's still this, but
I actually, like, double taked when I saw that the first time. I was like, bro, what? Like, am I looking at the wrong format? What is this? But I mean, hey, it's pretty sick.
Yeah, I mean, because, like, against Gardevoir, like, they normally transition to attacking with Gardevoir once they take out, like, 1 or 2 Archeops. So, like, you just have this ready to answer, and then hands for everything else. So I like this build a lot. Okay, next up, Aneil, you just played this at a League Cup yesterday, actually. And I think this deck is probably the one that's gotten the most hype or play since NAIC. So, Aneil, talk us through where Reggie Drago kind of sits.
Reggie Drago sits in a very interesting spot where if you can play the game, the deck is pretty good. But sometimes you can't play the game. And I don't think it's as far as just saying you need to play the game. There are a lot of in-between turns that I found where I needed a certain card that I was just not able to find because this ability is just very high-roll RNG. A lot of times you're going to Legacy Star, you're going to discard everything you need. And the other times you're going to Legacy Star and you're going to discard everything you don't need, and you're not able to bring back what you actually want. So I think the limiting factor of Reggie Drago right now is its consistency. In that sense, I think when it sets up, it can beat almost anything. You have so many different attackers. There's so much you can really do. I played at the League Cup yesterday, as Ciaran mentioned. Started, I think it was like 4-0. No, sorry. I was 3-0, then I was hungry, so I took an ID and then won again after. And then took another ID. So it did well 4 times in a row, right? And, like, this is exactly what I meant with Lugia. Like, it played well for 4 games, but if those are best of 3s, I don't think I come out of that 4-0. Because you're asking this inconsistent deck to do a lot. So I really like the deck. I don't love its matchup spread, especially given where we're at right now. Don't love that. There's not a lot you can really do to change it. You have to just basically pray you start faster than them for most of these. Gardevoir, you got to run him over with a Dragapult early if you can, or Rolling Iron, but it doesn't feel good, right? And Raging Bolt's just too aggressive for you to deal with a lot of the time. So depends on what you're going to see at Worlds, whether you want to consider this or not. Worlds being very tie de-incentivizing makes me a little bit wary because all these aggressive decks you can see at the bottom are the ones that give you the most trouble. So I do think people are probably going to pivot to more aggressive decks, and it might give you a bit of trouble. But I think the deck overall for League Cups, for challenges, good shout. You just need to play the game 3 or 4 times in a tournament. And I think it's a good shout.
Yeah, I'd say this probably starts like a tier below all the decks we've already talked about. You have a bad Gardevoir, Lugia, and Raging Bolt matchup, which are literally the 3 most popular decks. So you need to play at a Locals where you're very sure that, like, those decks aren't crazy popular. Or, like we said, like, it's a small sample size. Like, sometimes your Locals will be, like, 5 rounds. So it's like, if you can, like, escape those decks, you can see success. I will say I've played this deck a decent amount lately just because I think it's fun. It's really, really fun. I love playing it. But, I don't think it's in the best spot right now because it has bad matchups against all the most popular decks. If you can figure out a way, like with text or something, to make, like, those matchups better, even one of those matchups better, then I think maybe, there's merit to playing it. But for now, I'd probably say this isn't the best choice if you're trying to win your cups and challenges. So, okay. Next, we have Charizard. Charizard. So, I mean, Charizard's, I think, gone up a lot in play as well after NAIC. It honestly has like a good matchup spread. I think a lot of people just got kind of like bored with it when the new format came out.
Yeah, exactly.
And I do think with Gardevoir becoming such a popular deck, and we've seen Gardevoir almost across the board like cut the Mimikyu, I think Gardevoir is a really good matchup. So if you play in an area with lots of people love playing Gardevoir, I think Charizard's in a really, really good spot. I don't know how its Lugia matchup is 65%. It definitely should not be that high.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
But it's probably it's fine into that. Raging Bolt, as long as you can pull off like string Radzards together, you're pretty good into that. His Champpal matchup is definitely not 50%. But Charizard's just in a good spot. Like I feel like if you were someone who played Charizard before, like I think Charizard's a tier 1 deck right now. Go back to Charizard. I think before in our last format, like Charizard had a huge target on his back, right? Like everyone was countering it. Control is really popular. But I don't think people are that focused on beating Charizard right now. So I actually think Charizard's in a really, really good spot. And if you're someone who's enjoyed playing the deck, I think this is like a great time to come back to it. And I think it's a really, really good deck for locals. So.
Yeah, with anything, these win rates like that you see on the screen, always take them with a grain of salt, right? There's a lot of variance to these win rates. Obviously, not all players are created equal. First of all, second of all, some of these Mickeys really are Mickeys. So take it with a grain of salt. I do think Charizard's in a great spot. I do think people kind of overlooked it preparing for NAIC. The other thing was, I think the thing that limited Charizard that maybe we don't recognize at this time now that it's passed, but the hype of Dragapult kind of limited Charizard a lot. I think going into NAIC, people didn't really realize like Dragapult is not what we thought it was, or maybe it still is. We don't know, but in terms of popularity and hype level, like, it's not really there anymore. So that really limited people wanting to play Charizard because it's not a great matchup. So I think the emergence of Charizard kind of came on the back of Dragapult a little bit. So a couple weeks ago, or maybe it was a little bit longer, but somebody did really well with this, like Dragapult Pidgeot with like 101 Zard or 202 Zard, something like that. And other people started picking it up, and I would look at Limitless, and it was this deck over and over and over. And I think what people realize is like, okay, I'm playing this deck with Dragapult, but Charizard's just the better attacker. So a lot of people probably pivoted back to Zard upon seeing that, and now you're seeing a bit of a higher representation. I saw a lot of them locally as well recently. So there's a lot going on with this deck. I think we know it only gets better for Worlds. So if you're a League Cup competitor or Challenge competitor, also going to Worlds, this is definitely something you can one trick and really be prepared going into the World Championships. But I think for your locals, this is a great best of one deck as well. So a lot of power to Charizard right now, and I think it might surprise a bunch of people.
Yeah, agreed. I like it a lot. Okay, next up we do have Dragapult, Aneil. I think Dragapult is like fine. I actually think a lot of people just don't like playing Dragapult. I've noticed that. So I don't think it'll be like a hugely popular deck. I don't think it's bad though by any means. Like you mentioned, like it's good against Charizard. I think it's like fine into Gardevoir. It's probably close to 50-50. I do think we've established that the best way to play it is with Pidgeot and like maybe Charizard. I've played enough of the Lost Zone version just to be like this. It's too slow. I think doesn't put enough pressure on. I think a lot of Dragapult's bad matchups are like all these aggressive decks. So I guess again it's like similar. If you play in a meta game where like people like playing aggro decks, like probably don't play Dragapult. But if you play in a meta where people like playing slower decks, like I think Dragapult's good into those. Like stuff like the Charizard, like Gardevoir is fine. Like it's good into Champpal. So this is another deck where its matchup spread is very tight. It's like you don't have any like overwhelmingly good matchups. You don't have that many like overwhelmingly bad ones besides like Reggie Drago in my opinion. So I just think Dragapult's fine. Like it's in like that tier 2 for me.
I actually really enjoy playing this deck. I think I'm one of a very small minority that really enjoy playing this deck. It's a lot of fun. When you get set up, it's really good. I think what turns people off is it doesn't have the same like kind of self-sufficient engine that Charizard does. And a lot of people playing like the Pidgeot engine with Rotom and stuff, they're just used to playing Charizard. So I think that's why a lot of people kind of went back to it. I think the one thing that I've noticed a lot is the differentiating attack type is really difficult for you to kind of fulfill sometimes. The Psychic Fire. There are a lot of times where I have 2 Psychics or 2 Fires, or I simply just can't get an attachment down turn 1, and I'm relying on Neo Upper. So that, I think, is an issue. I think it's a limiting factor to Dragapult, and I think that's why we've realized that Dragapult is probably a better attacker in the Drago deck than it is in its own deck. just because you have that like energy support there. So that was also part of the reason why people paired it with Zard to begin with, just to kind of support that. But I don't know. I like what I want to say is that I think a lot of people like went to Charizard initially because people like Charizard, but that's not really a relevant thing in this because people love Dragapult as well, and I think a lot of people wanted this to be good and enjoy the Pokemon and stuff like that. So if this was like a Malamar or something, then I would chalk it up to like, hey, people just don't like this Pokemon. That's why they're not giving it a shot. But the deck is definitely a little bit more complex than Charizard is. I think there's it's a little bit less satisfying to just go boom like Charizard does. So with all those factors in play and the fact that a lot of people switch to 70 HP Pokemon, I think it turned a lot of people off Dragapult, and I think that's why the representation is a bit lower. But I actually think the deck is very strong. I think going to the World Championships, this is going to be something I personally test a lot. I think this deck is really strong. It's in the position to surprise a lot of people if you can get it running. And you look at the matchups, like there are quite a bit above at 50 or above, right? So you're okay into most things. Ties are a concern, of course, but I do like the card. I do like the deck. I think it's probably pretty good for League Challenges and Cups as well if you can get it going.
Yeah, my biggest concern is just you're bad into Lugia and Raging Bolt, which are very popular decks. And you don't have overwhelmingly positive matchups into anything, to be honest, besides Charizard, I think. So, yeah, it's like a fine deck. I don't think it's the best. Okay, next up, got my favorite deck. We have Champpal. I don't know. I don't think Champal's in the greatest spot. I guess if Charizard gets more popular, that's good for the deck, but it just feels like your matchups are like not that good. Like there's nothing I'm overwhelmingly like beating. The Gardevoir is a good matchup, but even then, it's like with Monkey Dory now, it's actually like way more annoying. With Fluttermane, if they play Devo, it's like way harder to beat them. The deck is still inconsistent sometimes. It's like Raging Bolt matchup really hinges on not starting Chen Power Iron Hands. Its Lost Zone matchup is like kind of sketchy because like now Lost Box, like if they play Hedgehog's, they're like Turbo, like turn one, like Greninja is not even that far out of the realm possibility. Reggie Drago, if that gets popular, is like not a great matchup. So it's like a good Chen Pao. I think you have like a lot of these like bad matchups. You probably have like a 50-50 into them. Like I think a good Chen Pao player is probably like 60-40 into Gardevoir. It's just like your matchup spread's not that good, and like you're an inconsistent deck. And like a lot of your matchups really hinge on going first or second and like not starting a certain Pokemon. So I mean, I probably will still play Chen Pao at some locals just because it's my best deck and my favorite deck, but I don't think it's in its best spot that it's been in. I think our last format, I would say, was clearly a tier 1 deck, but this format it's definitely tier 2 for me. So
yeah, it does feel like it fell off a little bit. I think you touched on everything. I don't have too much to add to this, but you just look at that matchup spread and it's enough to turn me off.
I will say Chen Pao's matchup spread is always very suppressed, I've noticed, just because like I think it is a little tricky to play sometimes. But like yeah, even like if you bump these a few percentage points, it would still have an overall not great win rate. So
yeah, it doesn't feel great.
Yeah. Okay, this is actually a deck I think has gone under the radar a lot that is actually like performing like decently well as the Ancient Box. I think mainly because it's good into like Raging Bolt, and then I thought it's good into Gardevoir just because you have the Dark Roaring Moon. But apparently according to this,
I think this does not make sense to me either. It's probably good into Gardevoir.
But yeah, apparently you don't have a good matchup into Gardevoir. I think the matchup into Gardevoir is probably fine. I mean, I get the problem. The problem is they go like Unfair Stamp and then like they lock you and like they try and like snipe around, and like Ancient Box doesn't have a Draw Engine, but I mean, Ancient Box I think is a perfect deck for locals. Like, it's fast, it's very simple to play, and its matchup spread is quite polarized. So like you should win the games you're supposed to win, you should lose the ones you're supposed to lose. Which if you're okay with that, like I think that's good. Especially if you're like a newer player, like a person who likes playing more simple decks, I think Ancient Box is fantastic. Like Charizard's a bad matchup, and if Charizard gets more popular, like that's not great. But like we haven't seen Charizard be like overwhelmingly popular yet, even though we said we would kind of expect it to. But I think Ancient Box is probably a great, like I'd probably put like a top of tier 2, like probably slightly contending for tier 1 for locals in my opinion. So
yeah, I like this deck a lot. I think there's a lot of factors that hold it back. I think the one you touched on with Unfair Stamp and no Draw Engine is probably pretty big. But the deck is very linear. It's very straightforward. Like you said, you're going to beat what you're supposed to beat. You're going to lose to what you're supposed to lose to. You're basically playing matchup roulette anytime you go to a cup anyways. But if you're okay with full send, like this is a pretty good full send deck. In terms of matchup spread itself, though, like you can see on this screen, and like we said multiple times, like take it with a grain of salt, but it isn't the greatest all around. I do think there are some here that maybe aren't completely accurate, but it does feel like you have very little potential to outskill your opponent in some of these bad matchups. So that is a bit of an issue. But I think overall, yeah, like I think this deck's pretty good. There's I saw a lot of people playing with Walking Wake now. It's got some new tools available to it as well. So cool deck. I'd be surprised to see it kind of get out of this tier 2 range, but it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, it's just something to consider, I think. Do we have any left? I think we have a couple left. Just Maron?
We had a couple left. We got some questions, too.
We have Maron left. I don't really play Maron, so now you talk to me about Maron.
Don't play this.
Really? It looks pretty decent on paper.
Yeah, I don't know. I tried it. I hated it, dude. You have without Flaffy, you die after turn 3 if you don't have if you're not hitting generators. So hey, if you like generators and you like generator roulette, yeah, play this. But I think there is a way better aggressive deck you can play in the format called Raging Bolts. So I would steer pretty clear.
Well, I mean, they do different things. I think Miraidon is like a super aggressive deck, like you said. It's less sustained, but like it puts pressure on. Like you can put Iron Hands early to take
for sure.
Prizes, so
yeah,
I mean, you kind of see it's interesting. It's good against Gardevoir and like Lugia, which are two of the most popular decks. And then you have some really bad matchups down here against like Charizard, Lost Box, Raging Bolt. So it's again similar to the Ancient Box where I think its matchup spread is very polarized. But if you can like snipe a proper metagame, I actually think Miraidon's fine. But like
for me, I see the bottom 3 and it's enough to turn me off.
I don't know, look at the top 3, Aneil. Or top 4, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, but I don't know, man. Look at like Charizard's growing, Raging Bolt's huge, and Lost Sun just won NAIC. Like that's terrifying.
Yeah, I guess. I agree this is a tier 2 deck. I'm just saying I think it's not horrible. I think it's fine.
Yeah, no, I'm over exaggerating when I say like straight up don't play it. Like I'm being dramatic. I think you can play this if you want. I just think there are better options if this is your style of play. And like I have tried it a fair bit. I'm not like kind of just pulling this out. Like I've tried it enough to come to a conclusion where I feel like this deck is definitely not what it used to be without Flaffy, and you require so much more as these bigger EXs come out and there's more HP all around. Like you're requiring a bit more out of yourself in terms of like Raichus and stuff like that. So I think it does get a little bit tricky. My issue mainly with Miraidon right now is the fact that I felt like I basically had no say on what happened in the game. If I didn't hit generator, I just lost. So I definitely think if this is your kind of deck, like yeah, take it for a spin, see if you like it. I personally didn't, and I think there are better options, but I'm sure this appeals to some people from our scheduled cut. So our first question comes in from Rowan Stavinow and says, "Can you provide a masterclass on getting lit?" No. The answer is no, because I'm on a public forum that's viewable for everybody. So the answer is no. But thank you, Rowan. Rowan and I had a great set yesterday in top 8. We were like yapping so much that we forgot there was time, and then we looked up after game 1, and there was like 12 minutes left. So shout out Rowan Stavinow, bro. I love that guy. Nice. Do you have anything to add to how to get lit?
No, I think just have fun. That's like it. Be good vibes, good energy, be in a positive mindset.
Okay, I respect it.
That's what I'll say.
All right, Dom Ritchie asks, out of every Pokemon, who's winning in a game to 21?
So I assume he's men's basketball.
I also assume that.
Well, we had the Mewtwo versus LeBron debate. I think Mewtwo is clearly winning that one. I don't know. Like I feel like low-key, maybe it's Dialga because you can like just pause time. So like you just freeze your defender. Like they're stuck, and you just go and put the ball in the net, and then freeze time.
Well, you can freeze the shot clock and just swing ball until you're ready.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, right? Like I feel like that is pretty
good.
That's my pick. I'll say Dialga since it can control time.
I'm gonna say Rayquaza. That boy's lanky. You can get it pretty high with Ray and get a couple dunks in. So I got Ray. All right. Seahar asks, as we just passed the 5-year anniversary of the Raptors championship, do you think they still win if KD doesn't get injured?
I'm just gonna say yes.
I'm gonna say no.
I mean, they probably wouldn't, but like to be fair, like our team was injured too. Like Kawhi was injured, Lowry was injured, and Anobi didn't play. Plus, I'm a fan, so I have to believe in Aneil. So the answer is probably no.
Fair enough.
To me, it's yes.
Yeah, I think that was one of those runs where you needed that help of KD not being there to kind of get over that hump in the finals.
It's one of those things where people are like, oh, they only won because that happened. I'm like, well, like I don't think any champion in NBA history would beat the Warriors with KD. It's like I'm not too concerned.
Yeah, exactly.
We won, that's what matters.
And well, the thing is too, like even you look at the NBA this year, like none of the top 5 teams retained their star for the entirety of the playoffs. So this stuff does happen. So
yeah.
Okay, so yeah, we're gonna say yes and no. Farkas says, okay, Farkas just commented on my video there. That was jank. Gavin Joe asks, biggest winner and loser of NBA free agency so far?
Loser, probably Clippers, since they got rid of Paul George and didn't get anything.
I like it.
Winner, I think the Thunder did a lot of really good moves at the margin. Like, they didn't get any stars, but I think they picked up a lot of solid role players. Who else has had a good free agency? I don't know. I'll just say the Thunder for my winner.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, loser, I agree with the Clippers. I think losing PG for nothing after what you gave up for that guy is crazy. They gave up Shea and 5 first-round picks for a couple of years of Paul George with one knee, so sick. Winner, I'm going to go Cleveland, just because they re-upped Donovan Mitchell, and I didn't expect that. I thought he was going to leave for sure, and I think most people did, so the fact they retained him for 2 years till 2027, he's got a player option for 28, I think it's good, tidy piece of business by the Cavs. All right. Yep. Mo Platinus asks, what signifies a top local game store and how could stores improve to provide a top 5 experience?
I think when they have the Shift Gear Game Store Owner of the Year there, that makes them a great game store.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. I don't know. I think a top local game store is just one where, like, the staff and the owner are very welcoming to players. Like, they're a player-first store where it's like they want to foster community. They have a lot of events, lots of space to play. Honestly, for me, the biggest thing is literally just space to play. It's like clean and like it smells good. That's my like top 3, I guess, for what I like when I go to the store.
You wouldn't believe how difficult it is to get all 3 of those things.
So
yeah. All right, I like it. For me, I think accessibility to cards is a big one for me. I pull up to League Cups a lot of the time, and I'm like, well, not a lot of the time, but there are some times where I'm like begging people for cards. I'm like, hey guys, can I borrow this because the store doesn't have it for me to buy? So I like a card database. I also like availability to sleeves and timely start.
I love that too. My biggest pet peeve is like when we start tournaments late because like people are late or whatever. Like you honestly just
we got stuff to
take
do.
a loss. Let's go. Yeah. Oh, other thing I like is when the stores are easy to get to. This is more of like a big city thing, but like I don't own a car, so when I can like get there easy.
Yeah, that's
on
a you
transit,
thing.
I like it. I literally do not.
I'm the opposite. I want them to be harder to get to, so no one goes.
Like I legit don't play League Cups if like I can't like take the subway or like the GO trade there or something. So.
Yeah. My favorite League Cup in the GTA is in Coburg, Ontario, because it's like 30 minutes the other way. Like I can just drive on the highway, get there. It's beautiful.
So I can't go. Sad.
True. I'll drive you, but don't worry.
Thank you.
Josh Bennett says, full episode on LeBron versus Jordan. I would love to. We would love to, but we will save that for another day. Vinny asks, what are the best testing methods? How many games should you realistically have with the deck before bringing it to a major? And are people who think Jason's the GOAT just boomers?
Real question.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Best testing methods. I mean, honestly, like find someone similar in skill to you. I mean, preferably, I guess, better than you if you can. Honestly, like just play games open-handed and like discuss like literally every single play. Like discuss if you do one thing, like what their counter will be, plan in advance. If you have to practice by yourself, some things I recommend is I really think it's really good if you can watch videos of like top players playing the deck you want to play. I guess it can be any deck, preferably your deck. So just watch stream VODs, or I mean like tournament stream VODs, or I guess even like someone's YouTube video or something. Pause the game like before they do their turn. And then see, like, okay, I would do this turn. Or you can even do it for every play. And then see what they do. If they do something different than you, try and figure out why. Like, sometimes you're right, but, like, a lot of times you'll be like, oh, I didn't think about that. So you can kind of shadow good players. That's something I recommend to a lot of people. And honestly, just playing in, like, online tournaments is probably pretty good testing. Like, the average skill level of an online tournament is probably similar to what you'll face at, like, a League Cup or a regional in the early rounds. It's more serious, I guess, even if, like, there's not that much on the line. And the other thing I do is I honestly, like, treat locals as like testing, like League Cups and challenges. Like those are like I use them as testing for bigger tournaments because I know my people will be taking it seriously. I can like test into meta decks, see which strats work. So those are my thoughts. And what about you?
No, I like it. For me, like best testing methods depends on what works for you. For me, I know that I need just I don't need a ton of games. I just need a couple quality games. So some of my best runs I've had with decks that I've tested like 3 or 4 games prior to tournaments with. I don't recommend it, but just if you know yourself and you know kind of how you work, then that's awesome. I actually find that when I test more, I get more burnt out with a deck and I play worse when I get to a big tournament. So that's what works for me. It's all about kind of what works for you, trial and error. How many games should you realistically have with a deck before bringing it to a major? And again, entirely up to you. If you can, above 50, I think that's the best practice, but there's no set number. And are people who think Jason's the GOAT just boomers? I would say no. Because I think I don't want to uncork this can of worms here. So I'm just gonna leave it at no.
Go watch Andrew Mahone's video. It did seem like the prevailing thing was the boomers said yes, the zoomers said Cord. But
fair enough.
Yeah.
But that's with anything though. That's legit with anything. Like you don't see some of these people, like the people who grew up with you and I did not watch Michael Jordan play basketball.
Yeah.
They didn't, right? And so you only have so much to judge on. So I think people just gravitate to what is new. And Jason Klaczynski now has really sick long hair. I don't know if you saw the photos of him. It looks pretty good. So
I did see the photos. Yeah, in Japan.
Yeah. I'm going to go Jason Goat again. I'm switching back from Tor just because of hairstyle.
Nice.
Jack Knight asks, what are some sports to get hooked on and where do I watch them? I'll let you start with this one.
I mean, honestly, the thing with sports is just like, it's personal preference, right? Like my favorite sport's basketball. Mm-hmm. If you want to get hooked on basketball, I do not recommend Googling NBA streams. Do not do that. But if you do Google it, you might find some websites where you can watch games. That's my favorite. I mean, the thing I like about basketball is like it's easy to play, right? Like there's everyone has outdoor courts near where you live. Literally just go bring a ball and play. That's good. I mean, right now soccer's a good sport. I mean, like the Euros are on, the Copas are on. Again, it's an easy sport to play. I like tennis a lot too. It's another outdoor sport for the summer. It's a fun sport. Volleyball is a fun one. Like go down to the beach or whatever, play. Honestly, bro, just like play as many sports as you have time to do and just see which one you like the best.
That's the way I look at it too.
Yeah. It's like kind of picking
I think I'm going to go a different route to this. Okay. I'm actually going to say the sports that have the hardest learning curves are the most rewarding to watch. So despite the fact I'm wearing a Canada soccer jersey and I play soccer like 4 or 5 times a week, it's my number one sport, I do not enjoy watching soccer. I really don't. I watch every single game. Ciaran knows this. I'll watch every game of the Euro, but I do not enjoy it more than most other sports. I actually also really dislike basketball. I like watching it. I'm not a huge on playing it, despite how much I talk about it on this pod. My choice would be football. I think football is the best sport to get hooked on because football and baseball are the most diverse sports in terms of what you have to learn before you can really enjoy and understand the sport. Learning it by playing it is really good. Football's a hard one to just play, obviously, but baseball, just watching the game, listening to the commentators, they provide a lot of analytics. I think the analytics in baseball are really, really cool. Really good movie. Watch Moneyball. Thick movie. Kind of teaches you a little bit about the analytics of baseball, but I think football and baseball are the top 2 most rewarding once you get into it.
Actually, that's a good point, Neil. You should go watch sports movies and see which one gets you the most hype, and then go pick from there.
Watch there's a couple good soccer documentaries that'll get you just hooked.
There you go. So go watch that. If you want recommendations, DM me or Neil. So
yeah, we got you. Okay. A masterclass teaching Pokemon players to touch grass. Can't do that. Thoughts on why Kinsman Park is terrible outside of holiday-related gatherings? That's a Pickering-related question. I can't do that. Yeah, you don't even know this one. Okay, so Jose Padilla asks, there's going to be a ton of new questions about the new Worlds qualifying system, which surprisingly there wasn't. But I want to hear your thoughts on how badly Kawhi messed up leaving Toronto after Paul George left him for Philly.
I mean, it just wasn't a basketball decision. He just wanted to go live at home and like play with his or stay with his family, so... I mean, like, I guess people are just motivated by different things, so I don't know if he really messed up. If his goal was to win more championships, yeah, he messed up. If his goal was just to live the lifestyle he wanted, I think he's happy with his choice. So
yeah, fair enough.
There you go. Very, very
I think, like,
lukewarm take from me.
I think right now he's down bad. Like a guy like that, he's competitive fire. I know it's strong enough that he's down bad right now.
Yo, did you see the photos of him in Costa Rica? He's not down bad.
Yo, I did see that. Yo, it's the off season though. None of these guys care right now. Like Josh Hart is like tweeting expletives like every other hour. Like it's just a wild west right now. Okay, Eli asks. So if you're on a deserted island, what would your favorite number be?
Number?
Asked this by a coworker. I was confused.
What does that mean?
I think there's supposed to be... I don't know. There's supposed to be like a real answer to this, apparently, but... Okay, whatever. Let's get that one.
My favorite number is 11, so I'll say 11, but I don't know what the answer.
No, because there's supposed to be like a legit answer to it. I'm sure that's why you asked it. I just don't know what the answer is, and neither do you, so we're out of the loop. All right, we're near the end here. Mo, Platinus again, dream Pokemon blunt rotation. I'm going to take the lead on this one. I will preface this by saying I do not smoke, but if I did, it would be Mo, Rowan Stavinow, Kieran Farah, Nick Moffitt, and who would be the last one? I need entertainment because that's a very entertaining group. I would go with Jake Dadton as my sixth, and the reason being, those people all have fantastic stories, and they all have been playing the game for a good amount of time. But more interestingly, they're open-minded, fun individuals. So I think that's why I would choose those 6.
Nice.
What do you got? You got the same one?
I mean, again, I don't want to promote smoking on our podcast, Neil, so I'm going to rephrase it as Dream Six.
Yeah, I don't either.
As best people to have conversations with. I'll do Pokemon themed.
Yeah.
All right, let's get. All right, you know what? Let's put Jason and Torrid on there. You can have some goats there. I think that'll be very interesting. Let's put Jake Gearhart. Let's put. Okay. Who else is really funny? Liam Halliburton. I think Liam would be fantastic, actually.
Oh, Liam would be great. I forgot. I should put him in there.
Put Liam in there. Who else would I put in there? Who's a good Pokeduelist? I think Pokeduelist would be really funny. And I guess I'll just put myself so I can witness all this and then tell you guys what happened. So.
Of course. Sick. Okay. Last one here. Second last one. We have a real one at the end. Favorite NBA free agency signing so far?
Andre Drummond to the Sixers, bro. That's a game changer.
Crazy.
No, I'll say Scotty Barnes. Shout out Scotty Barnes.
I got Garrett Temple. 1 year deal back to the Raptors. Okay. Dan Hugar, friend of the show, sends in, here's my shift gear question, a few beers deep at the USA versus Uruguay game. Also RIP U.S. men's national team.
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, that's a tough one. How do you determine if you're skilled / keepable enough to bring BDIF and outplay people versus a rogue or matchup roulette deck and rely on the deck / matchups more?
That is a good question. I mean, I think it would just be like your win rate's just like higher. Like you kind of just know, right? Like if you go with like a League Cup and you just find yourself, like for example, your overall win rate is like very high, like with a tier 1 deck, then that's probably the answer, right? Like, you can even A/B test this if you have enough time. Like, go to locals and play, like, pick up one of those decks, like a matchup related deck, like, play it for, like, 5 locals, and then play, like, tier 1 for, like, it doesn't have to be, like, specifically one tier 1 deck. Just play tier 1 decks for, like, 5 locals, and just, like, compare what your win rate is. And, like, even, like, keep track of how many games you're like, oh, I think I won this game because I made this play, or, like, my opponent made a mistake and I was able to punish it. Like, it's, like, a bad answer, but, like, the answer is just kind of, like, you'll know. So, like, I mean, like, if you look at, like, my Limitless page, or, like, I don't know what yours looks like, Aneil, but it's literally, like, the same deck, like, over and over, because, like, I'm just like, all right,
Mine's completely different.
Yeah, like, I'm just like, let me, like, especially the Lugia year, I'm just like, let me just get really good with a tier 1 deck.
Mm-hmm.
I'll give myself a slight edge with, like, people who are playing a worse deck than me, and if people are playing the same deck as me, I probably know the matchups better. I guess the other thing, too, is, like, if you just practice all the matchups, you feel like you know the matchups inside and out, you're probably more well-prepared than most people you play against. And just having that tier 1 deck, or, like, I guess the raw power of the deck, is just going to give you, like, that extra edge as well. So
I'm actually glad you took that stance, because I actually have the total opposite stance. My Limitless page is entirely different. Every single entry is different until the very end this year, where I played Artina twice. But I've always kind of relied on the idea that I don't have the time or the resources to outplay a lot of these people who play BDIF. Whether that's true or not, I actually don't think it's true anymore. I think if I devoted myself to it, I definitely could do it. I just choose not to because I don't want to play like thousands of games with the same deck. But before, when I was playing a lot less, I would always like kind of deviate to these rogue kind of archetypes. For the most part, just things that counter the best decks, and that's kind of been my mentality all the way through. So I think, like Ciaran said, there's a lot of you kind of just know. There's a fine point in time where you're like, okay, I can beat everyone, and then there's sometimes where you just got to be real. Like, I'm not as good as these people, and that's when you kind of pivot over. So I think it's a realization thing. I think it comes with time, but I definitely think there's sides to there's merit to both sides of the spectrum in that sense. So it's all about finding out who you are. Which Dan Hugar, we know you are a BDIF kind of guy.
Yeah. Actually, I'll guess. I just looked up my Limitless cups. How many Lugia Limitless finishes in a row do you think I had?
In a row?
Yeah.
5?
7.
Jesus. Did you ever play like another deck in between those and not get a finish out of it? No, right?
It's always Lugia.
That's wild, bro.
I mean,
I don't know.
Like, you can even on my Limitless, I'm looking at, like, all my best finishes, like, in the past 2 years, are literally just Lugia and Gardevoir. I mean, those were the best decks at the time, and I'm confident I probably played them better. And I have a lot of finishes with Champpal. Like, I have some, like, top 32s and stuff. But I mean, that's a higher variance deck, right? Like, I think I can look back at a lot of my tournaments and be like, okay, I won or lost games, like, out of my control or my opponent's control as well. So, yeah. So I'd say, honestly, like, if you are, like, just trying to be successful as a player, like, literally just play a tier 1 deck and just get really good at it. That's the best advice I can give you. But yeah, if you want to introduce some more randoms,
I actually would,
do whatever.
I would actually give you the opposite advice. I'd say play like some like aggressive, crazy counterbox deck and learn the meta that way. So there's so many different ways you can approach this. Like, I actually think Ciaran's method is probably better. I think mine's more fun. So I'm going to present mine. Just like learn the hard way and how to beat all these decks with like maybe your own builds or something like that, and keep playing them, keep tweaking them, and it teaches you deck building. Also teaches you like what's important in the sense of like your one deck that you one trick isn't always going to be there for you to play, right? So it kind of diversifies your skill set in that sense. But I do think Ciaran's method is better. I just want to be a contrarian.
Yeah, I mean, I think playing the best deck, your average placement will be higher. If you play a deck that has like a bigger matchup spread, like Aneil is saying, your chances of having a higher finish are actually probably higher, but your chances of having a lower finish are also higher. It's like it's way more variable because you're relying on like a lot more luck, I guess. In that sense,
you have to be more creative too.
Yeah, you're like relying on like what you hit more. I mean, like a good example is when Cyrus won NAIC. Like they played a deck that like auto lost like Lugia and Mew, and they hit 0.
Yeah,
and then they just like won the tournament. But I think there's also like a lot of outcomes where they hit those decks. They don't even make day 2. So if you're willing to like gamble and take risk, I think like that's fine to play those decks. But if you just on average want like higher average placements over time, like just stick to playing like the best decks, playing them well. So
yes, sir, I agree. Okay, so that wraps up our Q&A. We had a bit of a slower week this week, so we decided to fill it with nonsense for the most part. So thank you for all your questions you sent in, even though I think 1 or 2 of them were related to Pokemon. The rest were just jank, but we love jank, so thank you for that. Make sure to come tune into our Masterclass on Sunday. It is entirely free. We're going to be running it like it's a Metafy class, except you don't have to pay a dime. All you got to do is hit the subscribe button. We really appreciate it as well. And we'll see you next Wednesday.
Yep.
Peace.
Or this Sunday if you come to our thing.
Or this Sunday. True.